it to Mike.
Tell Mike.
It looks like, man, that looks like Dora's aware that we have a meeting.
Oh, and Dora and Carl just got on,
Okay.
so I'll promote them.
Obviously, why that old one's really good, because I just pull it from there. I
Okay.
always forget that I should go into the template and just take that off. It's an easy thing, but I always forget it's there.
Yeah.
So.
YouTube
Yeah.
streams.
I think so.
Good. Okay.
Chart.
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay, we're good to go, Kelly. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, well, thanks for making the behind the scenes work.
Yeah, Hunter's the best.
Okay, well, it is Wednesday, April 5th. It's 12:03, and we have a finance committee meeting today. And I'm gonna let everybody at the table introduce themselves, although I'll say that President Bellamy is online, members Wilson and Jacobs are all online, and I am Kelly Lessons here in the boardroom. So everybody can just enter their names.
Yep, I'll start. Savannah Stamatis, Competitive Grants Manager.
And I'm Katie Roberts, I'm the Development Director here at ASD.
Andy Ratliff, Chief Financial Officer.
Julie Nelson, Senior Director of IT.
Amanda Foster, Executive Assistant to the School Board.
Aurora Cokerland, Senior Director of Finance.
Katie Parrott, Senior Director, O&D.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. We have 3 items on the agenda for today. The first one is a grant update for the 3rd and 4th quarter. So I will let our grant experts speak.
Yeah, thank you. We're really excited to be here. We've been trying to get better about, I know we give the board right now those quarterly updates, and we're trying to get better about letting the chiefs know, as well as hopefully the board know, a little more in depth about what we're doing with grants. This is, we've been doing lots of really big things this year. It's really kind of turned around after all the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
So grants are starting to become a bigger thing. So this is a piece of the presentation we gave to some of the chiefs about a month ago.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let Savannah lead this though.
Super.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with a high-level overview of the federal funding landscape relevant to K through 12 education for the upcoming fiscal year. Also to provide an overview of current in-progress grants with potential funding to ASD, and to discuss key areas related to grant management, including capacity, duplications, and sustainability. So this first slide that you'll see is just kind of a visual of the federal discretionary grant funding based on President Biden's approval of the FY23 federal budget, which was passed into law on 12/29/2022. This included a 5% increase in Title I funding, $111 million in additional funding for mental health services in schools, a 6% increase in special education state grants, $30 million for school nutrition equipment grants, 5% increase in TRIO program funding, $40 million for summer electronic benefits for children, 12% increase in National Science Foundation funding, and a 7% increase in the Bureau of Indian Education funding. So this is all super exciting things that we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of as we kind of progress through pursuing some of these new funding. The terms that you'll see used throughout this presentation include discretionary and competitive grants, which is basically the grants that are awarded to districts based on a competitive application and review process. Funds are not guaranteed to the district, so it's an application process. Financial quarters, we're utilizing the ASD fiscal year quarter schedule. Budget solution reference, we're specifically utilizing the FY23 general fund expenditures by state function chart available on the ASD website. And the indirect costs represent the expenses of doing business that are not readily identified with a particular grant, but are necessary for the general operation of the organization and the conduct of activities it performs. So going down to the acronyms that we will be using, there are a significant number of acronyms used throughout this application or throughout this presentation, which is just kind of the general consensus of grants. We all use acronyms. And so this is the page that kind of gives you all of those definitions specifically if you'd like to reference those. So moving on to the next slide. The three areas that we're going to be focusing on for this first quarter presentation is the additional funding in mental health services, the additional funding in special education state grants, and the increase in funding in National Science Foundation funding. We'll scroll down. This is a summary of the grants that are in process that or have been submitted on behalf of the district in Q3 of FY23. That includes the Alaska Community Foundation Camp Initiative Grant. We requested $76,000. The Alaska Reads Early Education Grant, we requested $800,000. The FY24 Senate appropriations, we requested a total of $53 million. And the Alaska Children's Trust, we requested $10,000. And the SAP grant, we requested $25,000. In total, that accounted for a little close to $45 million that we've requested. And I just wanted to highlight the appropriations request process is a brand new process for the district to participate in. So we're not sure if an indirect cost rate will be allowed or allotted for that funding if it is awarded. So to be overly conservative in how much funding we anticipate in the indirect funds, we excluded that from our calculation, and we also excluded the Alaska Community Foundation request because they do not allow an indirect cost rate in their awards. So with that, if we are awarded all funding requested in Q3, we're looking at an indirect to general funds of $50,000.
And again, these are all our larger grants. So we have lots and lots of small grants to come through, but these are all the ones you would see through board memos come through.
All right, and scrolling down. I wanted to highlight why these grants are relevant to the work that's happening at the board level and the budget solutions. Oh, yeah.
Can we pause?
Yep, sorry,
President
Martha.
Bellamy, go ahead.
Sure. On the previous slide, are those grants are in process? Is that what? Is that what?
They didn't know.
So they have all been submitted at this point.
Okay. Okay. All right. So for full disclosure, I am on the board of directors for ACF and ACT. Just to put it out there, I have nothing to do with the allocation of any funding, but I did want to just put that on the record. You can continue. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Margot. So in relation to the budget solutions that have kind of been presented in the general fund expenditures chart, we believe that these grants support these specific areas of those budget solutions, primarily in the supportive services for program management and supportive services, direct services to students. The appropriations requests were in addition to bond reimbursement requests. So those were very heavily focused on capital planning items that needed to occur, as well as maintenance backlog options.
Cool.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. All right, again, for Q4, we're focusing again on those same things, which is the additional funding for mental health services, special education grants, and National Science Foundation funding. A lot of these increases in funding, the request for applications haven't quite come out yet. We do anticipate that they'll be coming out within this fiscal year. So this is what we are currently working on for Q4. Everything that we're currently working on, we're highlighting things that are over $30,000, and the funding that's listed on this slide is only for the first year of funding. So most of these are multi-year funding. So we just wanted to highlight what the first year of requesting funds will be, so that that's what we'll see come through if awarded for this next fiscal year. So the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act grant, which focuses on services for the Security Management Department within Anchorage School District, is requesting $68,000 for year one. The Thread Alaska Community Innovation Grant is for Creekside Park Elementary and will support morning care. So we'll be requesting about $100,000 for that grant.
President Bellamy, did you have a question? I saw your
No, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay.
21st Century, that's our after school programming. We're requesting 1.5 million. OJJDP is the response to students exposed to violence grant. This is a coordinated effort between multiple departments, and we'll be requesting $970,000. And finally, the PIDAP grant, which is Positive Youth Development After School Programming, will enhance services for 5th through 8th grade students that are enrolled in 21st Century programming. And we will be requesting $150,000. So that's our first slide. We've got a lot going on this quarter. We've got the McKinney-Vento grant. We're anticipating requesting $60,000. The Service High School literacy grant, where this funds has already been allotted to us. We're guaranteed these funding, so that's $270,000. And the Arts for Justice Involved Youth is for McLaughlin School, and we're requesting $50,000. And also the Mayor Community Grants, Mountain View Elementary was invited to submit an application for $100,000 for their school. So in total, that is, sorry, we're still on that page, no, sorry. It's about 3.3 million that we're going after this quarter, with an anticipated, if we are awarded all of these funds, 199,000 to the general fund. And again, I just want to highlight, this is just for year one. Most of these grants, if not all of them, are multi-year funding. And the next slide again is just making those connections to the budget solutions discussion. Most, if not all of these services are highlighting support services, both at the district level and direct services to students, and also responding to the before and after care needs of our families.
Can I ask?
Yep.
How are the odds? What are the odds of receiving them? I mean, I'm competitive. Like, go.
So I am fairly new to the district, so a lot of these grants are the first time that I am individually going after them. I don't know, honestly, what our chances are, especially with the appropriations. It's such a new process. I do know that Murkowski was able to get 500 million allocated to Alaska as a whole just last year. So I do, and they did reach out to us last week, kind of asking for more information for some of our applications, which is exciting to me, that I think that they feel like some of those applications are fundable. I don't think that all 53 million will be funded though.
Okay.
But I think they want to, really help with it, and that's why they were digging deeper to see what they could work with. As far as the other quarter 4 funding, looking at it and having been here a little bit, I mean, our 21st Century, I feel will move forward, no problem. The McKinney-Vento is one of the that we get each year, usually get more than that 60, that's what's allocated to us, and then other districts don't apply a lot of times, and so we get more than we've asked for. As she said, the service learning is one that we're in our final year, so we'll probably see that come around again next year for another 5-year application.
Okay.
So we'll see where that stands. All depends kind of how we wrap up this year. The mayor's grant, we were invited for that, so I believe that's fully something that will get funded. The other ones are kind of one-off grants, but I do feel that all our programs are we've dug into these really well, and Savannah has really taken the time to piece them together so that our departments are working together. And so it's a better experience than in the past, where I think a lot of the departments would go for a grant on their own, and even though another department might be doing the same. So these are really good, well-rounded grants. I feel good about them, but again, we don't know until.
But these are brand new grants that are coming out, and especially the Thread Alaska grant. That is like the remaining ARPA funds that they need to spend. So I don't know kind of how many people are going after them, how much funding they actually have. I know that the Alaska Community Foundation summer camp grants, they had like $3 million worth of requests, and they do not have anywhere close to that in funding. So I think that will be highly competitive fund. So I'm not sure about that one.
I'll wish you well.
Oh, yeah. I know, once it's out there, it's all we can do. But like I said, we have usually about, on top of these larger grants, we have, I'd say, about 300 smaller grants.
So in total for FY23, we're tracking about 300 discretionary grant applications that have been submitted either at the district level, at the department level, or by individual staff members. which is significant. We're tracking significantly more discretionary funding requests than we have previously. I don't know if that's because we've gotten better at having individuals report to us and so that we can accurately track that information, or if there's more interest in funding this year.
A lot of those grants are those $1,000 to $5,000 grants
Right.
for small classroom
Yeah,
projects.
but 300 of them will add up.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Sorry. So when it's earmarked for a particular school, that school just gets to the discretion of spending that money, that pool of money?
Are you talking about the mayor's grant specifically?
Yeah, like the mayor's grant, and I think there was another grant there for
Oh, the Creekside.
Creekside, yeah.
So for the mayor's grant, Mountain View was specifically requested to apply for it. So yeah, they still have to propose a budget and show a full narrative of what they'll do with the money, but it
Okay.
will be specifically for Mountain View School.
Okay,
The Creekside program, we actually put that out to the whole district, hoping that some larger departments might have the capacity. And it just at this time, as you see lots of grants going on, some of the larger departments didn't have the capacity. And so the principal at Creekside was able to come up with an amazing program for before school. So yeah, in that case, he'll specifically go to Creekside. But again, with a full budget and narrative that he has to follow.
okay. And my final question is, do we account for grants that the board receives, like from the assembly or from the muni? Do we account for that in this reporting?
So sometimes if we're given that information, yeah, so it's one of those things like we track information that we're given, but there's no, like, we don't always have access to all of the information that's coming through, but we do try our best to work with departments to get that information as regularly as possible so that our reports are an accurate representation of all discretionary funding coming into the district.
Okay, so if a school is receiving a grant or has applied for a grant, it's the school's responsibility to report that to your office. And okay, so they don't need your approval to apply. They just need to report that they have it.
For the smaller ones, unfortunately, no, we'd love to, because we can do a lot of editing and usually up the chances of receiving it. But for the smaller grants, a lot of times they require the principal approval, but not our approval. Now, for any of the federal grants, our office is the only office who can apply for those.
Okay,
So those larger grants, no, they do have to go through us.
okay. Thank you.
Yep. This next slide is just kind of a full year overview of everything that we've done, that we've been successful in receiving, and what we anticipate for this final quarter. Quarter one, we received just over 3.6 million. That was reported on board memo number 50. Quarter two, we received just over 6.8. That was reported on board memo number 122. And then quarter three and quarter four is just a summary of what we presented today as well.
And could you, maybe you mentioned it, but I was slow to follow because I had too many late nights in a row. Does the $53 million Senate appropriation, could you just speak?
To what we put in?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so about 10 million of that funding was requested for secure vestibules.
Okay.
Another, I don't remember how much exactly off the top of my head, was again, security upgrades, so buzzing systems and things like that for schools. Two requests were for roof replacements for 2 schools. Again, I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but I'm happy to provide that information at another time.
Yeah.
And working with grants, we always make sure, of course, that, the whole, making sure it's supplanting, not supplementing. So we want to make sure that any of the vestibules or the security systems are not being asked for in other through bond or through other grants. But we have enough that unfortunately we need, that we're able to pay other individual schools. So nothing's overlapping.
So nothing that was itemized or included in this request has already been approved by voters.
I don't believe so.
Are they things that were taken from like the 6-year CIP?
Yes, so
Okay,
capital planning,
okay.
the capital planning department, Thomas, last name, I'm
Dennis?
forgetting.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
they were the ones that led these applications and were reviewing to make sure that there was no duplication of requests.
okay,
Our job was just one, to identify the opportunities, make sure we were vetting it against what had previously been approved from other appropriations. Just to make sure we weren't wasting our time, and making sure that it was going under the correct departments who would then review and approve those funding. And then just providing some general editing and supports for them as we submitted them.
Because it was, yeah, it's something that they, was very new to them as well. So we were just working together to make sure we could.
And because
put our
of,
best
yeah,
effort.
and because a lot of it was construction and security based, it was very technical and, construction based, which is just not a field of information that we have any knowledge of generally. So we usually let them lead their applications and just provide support in identifying and prospecting potential funding for them and providing general editing services for them.
I'm kind of aware that there is a timeline for a lot of construction projects in Alaska, right? A lot of work needs to happen in the summer because that's when the students are there and there's snow in the roofs. Do you have a sense of when ASD will hear back about this?
So our assumption is that since this is fiscal year 24 appropriations, we would anticipate them coming sometime in October.
Okay.
Just in line with the federal fiscal budget.
Okay.
But also capital planning and security management has done an excellent job of being super mindful of the workforce that is in Alaska and not asking for so much that
They can't do it.
like if we were to get all 53 million, would be like they wanted to be very mindful that it actually would be able to occur within the funding period.
Yeah.
So they've done an excellent job, and we've just kind of considered all of those
Yeah.
before we submitted.
When Murkowski's office actually reached back out to us, that was one of the things we talked about, in cutting down maybe that large ask. What makes more sense to ask for now, and if we ask for just design costs, could we, how long could we sit with those design costs, to help us if we didn't have the funding for the next step, and that kind of thing. So we're really trying to be mindful of that.
Yeah, they've done an amazing job with all of that.
Great, well, I think
Yeah.
that's really exciting and I appreciate the update.
Yeah, one more slide
Oh, one more
for
slide,
you,
okay.
sorry.
It keeps going.
Wrap it
This
all
is
up.
just wrapping it all up, the total amount that we requested minus the amount that we're not sure if any indirect costs will be allowed, which is about 4.1 million. If that 4.1 million was awarded, we would be looking at an indirect to the general funds of 250,000. And just highlighting that indirect because those are funds that can go to the operational costs of these grants, which is a huge hindrance for a lot of departments in pursuing grants, is that they require a lot of administrative management. So we always try to, be mindful of that indirect piece so that we can actually support those new projects.
The memo for quarter 3 is that in progress? Or
It'll be in
will that-
progress, yeah, so we're still,
We're
yeah, we're
probably
just,
not till June.
it should be out in May, we're just a little
Okay.
underwater right now with quarter
That was
4,
through, right, quarter 3?
no, quarter 2, quarter 3.
Oh,
Quarter 3 just ended, so we
Okay.
should-
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've just ended quarter 3. The
Okay.
quarters are consecutive, aligned with the school year, correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, so once we finalize all of these quarter 4 grants that are due, right, the second week of May is like the last grant that we have that's due, we'll be able to finalize all of our reports and submit them to the board.
wow. Thank you, guys. This is very helpful. I often wondered, you've answered a lot of my wonderings, so I know we're on an agenda, but thank you.
Well, you created a few new wonderings for me, so.
That's
Thank
what we
you.
like, yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, let's pivot to item number 2, consolidate financial statements.
All right. Let's see, I'll share my screen here. Yes, kind of. So just kind of a background on this, we have,
Can you make that bigger?
you guys are familiar with some of the reports we do, our annual comprehensive financial report,
Yes.
our big book, and then we also prepare a supplementary statements for the state of Alaska, which is aligned to the state chart of accounts. So what we'd like to do, and I've been thinking about this since I started in the district, wondering why we have 2 different sets of financial statements that generally provide similar information. Our plan is to consolidate these and just have the one annual comprehensive financial report. So that would mean that we just have to align our reporting to the state chart of accounts, like we do with the budget document. That was something we put into place, I think, in 2017 or 18, when we redid the budget and started aligning it with the chart of accounts so we could be more comparative to districts across the state. However, our financial report still does not align to that, and we would like it to. And that way we can, get rid of the administrative burden of producing 2 reports and just have it to 1. But there is information contained in the act for the financial reports that's not in the supplement. It's just presented differently. It's similar information, but with respect to the categories that we report on, it is a little different. So those of you with
Really
extremely good eyesight can probably see this, but I'll blow them up.
Good. For those who don't.
For those who don't, let me see if I can blow these up to. So this is and I'm just going to highlight like about 3 different schedules and how that looks on one set of statements versus the other and where we want it to go to. So currently this is a snapshot of our financial report as it sits currently. So we have our revenue, expenditures, and it breaks it out by types of fund. So just kind of looking at these expenditure types is what's going to change. So you see it says general admin, instruction, transportation, ops and maintenance. So looking at on my screen. Okay. So on the supplemental schedule, we have it aligned to the state chart of accounts, similar schedule. The only real difference on the number of funds is we include grants and these non-major funds into all in one special revenue. But we'll continue to break that out so you can see how much we got in grants. But this one on the expenditures is more aligned to the state chart of account where you have instruction, special education, instruction, support, all those different ones. You have some similarities, you have the transportation and community services, food services. Those are all still going to be really consistent in the reporting. But this is one schedule that would change, not a big change really. A lot of those categories really just kind of line up pretty close anyway. But we would go with this version of it versus the previous version.
Okay.
That's here. So that was the first schedule. The second one would be, that I probably want to highlight.
Is this like a year-long project?
Well, we started working on how those financial statements would look. So we would anticipate putting this in the next time we produce one of these books, it would be in the new format. We've been thinking about it for a long time and how we could make it happen. And really, this is, I think, a good time we can do it. So, but
We're excited. Okay. Good.
Scroll down to a couple other ones. And there's only really, kind of one schedule that I was concerned about, the change in the information and the way it's presented. This is one of the schedules that I wanted to highlight, but it's not really one that you see a lot of change in. So this is one of our schedules. It has, again, the same expenditures down here. I can pull it up, maybe. As what we showed on that previous one for the act for statement versus the supplemental. And this will go within those state chart of accounts. It has the instruction, special education instruction, all through those. So you can see we really do duplicate a lot of these schedules over and over. Sure I get the right one pulled up. So that one is on the one we just looked at would be replaced something like this, where it just has the expenditures changed here in total. But the one that I'm most concerned about, toggling back to our ACFR, is the detail when we break out in the general fund. So that's really where you would see a more significant change in the information that we provide. few more pages. All right, so this is where we start breaking down, where you saw that general administration and instruction and ops and maintenance. This is where we start breaking it down a little further. And this is what really you see where those changes are going to be. So this one we have Anchorage or the general administration, break it down into the school board, superintendent. There's a few dollars in instructional costs, support services, business management, employee HR. You know, we break it down more in like kind of these overarching sections of our development. And it does have it like for instruction, it breaks it down between like high schools, middle schools, technology, charter schools here. Where in the supplemental, it just kind of, it expands these state function categories a little further. So if we go down and start looking at them here, this is a similar schedule for the similar basis of presentation, but it has instruction, then it has, you know, salaries, benefits, supplies, services in the different categories aligning to the state chart. So this is the type of schedule you would see in replace of this schedule. So that's really my biggest concern about the information that we wouldn't be reporting it would be reporting in a different format. However, like if you look at business management, you see all those actual costs by department. So if someone wanted to go see how much the CFO office or the O&B office costs, they could look in our budget book, which also reports that and breaks it down even more specifically by department. It's just the way that we aggregate it in this set of financial statements would be a little different. So really, I just wanted to kind of run this through the committee and see if there's any concerns with this heading down this path. I don't know if there's anything in policy that requires you guys to approve it, but certainly didn't want you guys to get the report later on and like, hey, this is a lot different. So.
Well, I appreciate the heads up. I'll say, are there any board members with any questions online or concerns?
No, I don't have any concerns because I think it's wise to, you know, to have not have to produce two different documents. People don't trust when there's two different things, when we give them two different things. I appreciate the heads up as well, because I think now, will this change what is already in the budget document, but not for this year, but for next year, right?
It won't change the budget document at all. What it'll change the financial statements to more closely align with the budget document.
Okay.
So when you look at the budgeted, what we put in each state function for our adopted budget versus how it came out, you'll be able to tell it on just this one document versus trying to find
Great.
the
Okay.
secondary document that not as many people know exists.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really, just trying to make it a little more efficient and get everything to more line up with what the other districts across the state, just for comparability as well.
Okay.
We're the only district that actually reports it in this format at this point.
Interesting.
Thanks, Andy.
And also, we've maintained the capability to pull reports based on these criteria if the board ever really had questions or the public did. But we wouldn't be producing consistent reports in that format.
I appreciate it and admire your collective gumption. All right, well, if no more questions are on item 2 on financial statements, we can pivot to a legislative update.
That's good. I was going to say we had $175 million in one-time fundings that the House had voted upon, but
So I'll share for the record that I was just alerted that one-time funding was this morning rescinded from the operating budget, so I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I don't know much about what's happening. But I do know very loosely that the $175 or $176 million would have net ASD about 49 million. And I know that that is a much smaller number than the projected deficit for FY 20, what year are we now?
24.
Yeah, for FY 24. We just approved the FY 24 budget, which is balanced. But I mean, again, it's the $78 to $85 million deficit for FY 25. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, so even if, in my mind, had we had $175 or $176 million item stayed in the budget and been approved, we could have saved all $49 million and still been confronting
35 or 40
a
million.
$35 or $40 million deficit. So,
Exactly.
so House Bill 65 as amended, matched by this particular operating budget strategy, was not going to
Right. That's
prepare
really the
ASD.
short stuff. It's-
to confront its fiscal realities. Is kind of what I was intending to say.
So it's a lot more advocacy to go, I think.
Yeah,
I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, this
Member
is
Jacob.
Vice President Carl. Yeah. I spoke to Dr. Bryan earlier this morning about it, but I just want to throw it out here too at finance. I think we need to expedite our informational briefing on FY25. I look at individuals' behavior who are decision makers, and I truly don't think it's sinking in what ASD is looking at in future fiscal years, because the behavior that we're seeing isn't consistent with the fiscal cliff that we're seeing here locally. And so I really think we need to, in the spirit of information and advocacy, receive a briefing and really start to think about what FY25 looks like, given the lack of significant movement on the BSA bills, as well as potentially what may be a reduction in the one-time funds that were previously allocated. So I think that might be penciled out to our first meeting in May, but we might even want to consider moving that to our very next meeting as a priority, given everything that's going on. So just throwing that out there, thinking out loud. I think the sooner we work to inform the public and improve and refine our advocacy efforts, I think we're better serving our families.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Member President Buckley.
Because I don't disagree. I'm just, so in your mind, Member Jacobs, what is it that you're seeing? Not just, I mean, you want people to understand that if this, then what the impact of whatever, if nothing happens, this is what we're looking at 2 years out. If we get an increase based on some legislation that might pass, this would be the impact. So is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the question through the chair. I guess I'm looking at three scenarios that I think are playing out in Juneau in real time. The first is which, no increase to education funding is given through one-time funds or through a BSA bill, House Bill 65 or Senate Bill 52 or some other mechanism. The second, in which would be no BSA bill passes, but one-time funding is received, and we saw some form of that take shape before it was kind of yanked away here today. And then the third of which is a BSA bill passes. And so I think laying out those three scenarios, I mean, because we do have actual numbers to go by. We know what the one-time funding allocation was. We know what passed out of that, what passed in House Education for House Bill 65 and the reduction that took place. And so playing out those numbers for FY25 seems to be valuable. And then, even borrowing from our exercise that we did as a group a few months ago regarding what puzzle pieces we have to put together to make that fiscal reality work, I think that is reasonable, both to engage in as a board, as well as to better inform the information we're relaying to our constituents locally, as well as the information we're providing to elected officials to better inform their decision-making processes as session draws to a close.
Okay, so no increase, one-time funding, and then a smaller, whatever, not significant, but a BSA increase. So 3 scenarios.
Right. Yep. And then what options we would have, what tools are available to us to balance our budget, given those 3 scenarios. And so going over that information, I think, to me, adds value. I might be I'm in the minority on that, but I don't know a
Okay.
more higher purpose right now we should be focusing on.
Scenario impact outcomes, something like that.
And yeah, I appreciate Member Jacobs, the suggestion and the urgency. My question for President Bellamy is, is that space available at our next work session? At our next
So,
meeting?
I mean, we are in control of our space, how we use those sessions, so we can be ready. I worry more about whether the staff will be ready.
Mhm.
Because we need that information from them. So I will, I will check in with Dr. Bryant and see where he is. I missed our meeting this morning, but Member Jacobs has already spoken to him, so let's just figure it out. If not the 18th, then, so I don't know, because I don't manage the staff's time, but I'll let you know. If there's any way we can do a work session, we will do it.
So we did already set our work session for the 18th.
Okay.
I'm sure if we need.
Could we,
Actually-
or could we expand the works and make a longer double work session?
No,
Yeah, we can, I don't know, because I wasn't in the meeting this morning. I don't know what they did.
I can
I
catch
know
up.
what we had on the calendar. Go on, Amanda.
I can catch up with you later if you want, but for our work session, we already do have 2 different discussion items, and one is going to be a pretty big one because it's the school start times of PLCs. So I'm not sure if.
So what do we have in executive session? We can extend. We don't have to have an executive session.
We have to this time. We have.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. All right. So I'll get back to you, member Lessons and
Okay.
member.
As an individual board member, I would be willing to make a work session, to participate in a work session from like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Because I do, as Member Jacobs stated, appreciate the urgency of getting the information about our scenarios A, B, and C out to.
Let's see
all of our
if the
stakeholders.
staff can, see if the staff can do it. And then we can absolutely extend our work session from 3 to 5, since we have to have an executive session. All right, so I will get back to everyone.
I'm wondering if we can have some sort of a work session and staff is able to help, whether there could also be maybe updates in progress, updates on things that ASD has continued to look at. For example, I know Member Jacobs and I have spoken about the Ed Center lease situation. So if there was any new information about the status of efficiencies and save and cost cutting measures that have been identified since we passed the budget, that could be a helpful part of a presentation.
Yeah, well, and I think that's probably what you want to have in your committee right now.
Okay.
This is a bigger bite than that, I think, and
Sure.
more urgent.
Well, I guess I'm just.
But it is an
I'm
ongoing
just
conversation.
scenario.
I think it should probably be that whole area, not just the Ed Center, but all of those things we were looking at.
Yeah.
I think we need to track them through finance, if possible, and then move them forward.
To track each of the proposed, all of the proposed sort of efficiency, when student activities, immersion programs, is that what you're proposing? Sort of the different, when we learned that everything has a cost.
Yes. And I have to step away, but I'll get back to you. Sorry.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, it's clearly a subject that will continue to provide substance for discussion. Okay, does any other member have any other legislative update to share at all? Or
I'd say there's a few other bills that
Okay.
we way through. One is the online checkbook that
yeah,
Dave thanks. And I went and looked at the state's online checkbook. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that. But the level of detail in there is actually somewhat manageable. I am a proponent of more transparency versus less. So really their level of detail would be akin to us showing a school, a state function and state object, a vendor, and an amount, and like a document number, like a check number, ACH number. So it really doesn't have a whole lot of information as far as personalized information or even aggregate information. It's just, it seemed to be accounts payable checks. They excluded payroll, they exclude workers' comp, they exclude refund checks or payments through PFD or things like that, where you can, so for us, I don't know if it would be a huge lift to actually implement this the way that the state has done it.
Okay.
However, if they start wanting more information than that, then to the extent you're providing amounts, vendors, purchase order numbers, where someone can go in and like impersonate a vendor and try to get the bank account changed, that's where we get problems when you have too much information out there, where you do allow folks that opportunity to commit fraud.
Okay.
Or an increased opportunity. So we'll see where that goes. The one for the retirement, going back to a defined pension system is still in the works. My concern with that was more from the financial side of it. I know we need something to attract and retain staff to Alaska, but to the extent that it's a solvent fund, that's my biggest thing is, the previous pension programs are still fairly well underwater. So putting in a new one may increase that depending on how it's structured.
Does ASD have a position on, I don't remember the number or even the name, but it was sponsored by Representative Vance, and it's the healthcare sort of opt-in bill?
Right.
Does the administration have a stance on?
I don't think we'd be opposed to it. It is, like you said, an opt-in thing, and it just give districts and municipalities probably another opportunity to get less expensive healthcare. Healthcare seems to be trending up really, really fast as far as how much we have to pay every year. It's not just our plan, it's the health trust, and I think just about any other health plan in the state is increasing rapidly. So just to have a bigger pool and more competition would be beneficial, I think, overall. And given that it's not required, it really wouldn't affect us too much one way or the other, unless we were to take advantage of it, which then it would be more of a positive impact, I think.
Are there any other, there are many bills that would affect education, but those are certainly some of the big ones. Member Jacobs or Member Wilson, did you have any particular questions about any pieces of legislation from a financial standpoint?
No questions here. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I did want to say that I appreciated the presentations earlier in the meeting. So a really, really helpful meeting today. Thank you.
Great. Oh, yeah, President Bellamy.
I just wanted to ask a question for Andy. So what potential costs are there to the district with the retirement if that legislation passes?
So the way they have it written, as far as I can tell, there wouldn't be a change in cost to the district.
That's what I thought, but I don't like, sometimes they hide stuff.
Right, yeah, there was nothing that we could tell that jumped out. The thing that was in there was cost to the employees. They had a variable rate between 8 and 10% on contribution rates. So right now, our employees, like in our tier 4 and PERS, we contribute 8% of our salary to that. The state can at any time come in and say, "Nah, you're going to contribute 10% because our plan is going underwater." So it's more of a risk to the employees to do that than it is to the actual district.
Okay.
But the state could always change those contribution rates, the normal contribution rates for PERS and TERS as well, if it's underfunded.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Great ideas? Lots of money?
Future topics?
Any requests for future topics? Off the top of my head, I believe that we will be inviting researchers from ICER back next month to update us on some of their findings about teacher retention in Alaska. And I'm not sure what else is on the May agenda. but I know that I have a couple of thought bubbles for it.
Okay.
And I think that meeting is about the second week of May, maybe May 10th? May 10th at noon. So with that, I'm happy to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay. I'll second.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
This was a great meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Member Chair Lessons.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.